We've titled our grading system Option-Based Grading. The basic structure for this system centers around the difference between tests and projects. For the first unit, all students will be required to take a test to determine how much they have learned from the material. The second unit requires students to each do an individual project. Now, the title of our grading system comes after that, which is all the rest of the following units allow the students to have a choice between tests and projects. Then the final project, which is cumulative over the whole semester, will be a final group project. Our grading system is also based off of a style of mastery. To get a 1, the students must exhibit exemplary work, a 2 is mastered work, and a 3 is deemed to be not mastered. To pass the unit, they must at least reach mastery. To reach exemplary, the student must get a 90% or above on that unit's test, or score 90 out of 100 points or above on a project according to the rubric. To reach mastery, they must get between 75 and 89% on a test, or 75 out of 100 points to 89 out of 100 points on a project according to the rubric. Below mastery is 74% or below on that unit's test, or 74 out of 100 points or below on the project, again according to the rubric. Mastery must be reached to move on to the next unit test. If mastery is not reached on the first unit test, they must take a second version of the test. If mastery is not reached on the unit project, they must take a comparable second version of the test. This is because students who do the unit project could turn in a very, very bad first unit project, get feedback on it, make all of the improvements, and then turn in a very good second unit project. This would require them to not work very hard on the first submission and then fix it all for the second submission. They may take the test up to 2 times after not reaching mastery the first time. Our point system has each unit project and test being worth 100 points, the final cumulative group project being worth 200 points. All of the final points earned divided by the number of possible points will be the final average, and the students must reach a cumulative 75% or above to pass the class. For the project, students will be given a general concept or question that they can take in whatever direction they want. However, this must be approved by the teacher at least 2 weeks before the unit project is due, so the teacher can determine whether or not it is an appropriate project. The test will be a random selection of questions in a pool of questions of comparable difficulty. The retest will be a random selection of the remainder of the questions in the same pool of questions.
Research done by the Education Partnerships Incorporated found that it was better for schools to incorporate rubric-based grading. They also found that when students were allowed to redo assignments and replace a poor grade with a good one, they were more willing to put forth effort on assignments. It was determined that by eliminating zeros as grades, student effort was no longer suppressed and could improve. We took the findings that the EPI published and figured out how we could make them work for us. We finally decided on a method of allowing the students to choose how they were evaluated, as well as giving them the opportunity to redo units that they did not master. The Journal of Effective Teaching published an entry about the usefulness of rubrics. In it, they found that people always have a certain criteria in mind when evaluating something. Rubrics help us express what the criteria is, whereas standard grading methods do not always make that clear. Since this is what our system of grading is based around, it helped us to come up with how we wanted our rubrics to work. We were able to customize them to express the criteria that we thought to be important.
An example of a math project I would give in my class is to ask students to display mastery of the relationship between finding a secant line and the definition of a derivative through 2 different ways, graphically and algebraically. I would allow them to do this in any sort of fashion, such as a presentation or a podcast, or even allowing them to teach a lesson during class. They would be responsible for submitting their idea, as I said earlier, for the project at least 2 weeks in advance, so I could approve it. For my rubric, I would look for whether or not the students displayed mathematical reasoning, how many mathematical errors they had in their project, how they used mathematical terminology and notation, and how their explanation of their topic was. Depending on how they did in each of those categories, I would give them a different amount of points, as you can see on the rubric displayed on the screen.
An example of a project that I would give in my history class would be to have students be required to display mastery of the American Revolution by presenting a project that covers one of the following: the reasons for which the American Revolution took place, major events of the American Revolution, or the immediate results of the American Revolution. This can be done in any fashion that they deem fit, such as a presentation, a podcast, or even by teaching a miniature lesson about the subject. The student would be responsible for submitting their idea for the project to me at least 2 weeks in advance, and if I deem it fit, the student should start on the project. If I do not approve, the student must submit a new topic. This is what my rubric would look like. I would have them talk about their objective, go into some details about and show how accurate they were with their history, use their sources to support everything that they found, and I would also grade them on their preparation. We would either have 5, 10, 20, or 25 points for each area.
An example of a music project would have them display the mastery of the Romantic period by any of the two ways: by going over an important piece that displays relevant themes and styles of the Romantic period, or go over a composer that relates to important themes and styles of the Romantic period. This can be done in any fashion they deem fit, such as a presentation, a podcast, or even by teaching a miniature lesson. The way in which they can do this project would be to submit it to the professor 2 weeks in advance, so they can approve it or disapprove. What my rubric would look like: it goes over them staying on the objective, going into detail and showing that they understand the topic, their use of sources to support their opinions, and their preparation for the actual project. In addition to the other project and tests, the student will have to work as a group to have a group project presented at the very end of the semester project, or to have the students connect all the different units they have covered together. Also, they give students experience working in groups, and also have students who are excelling help students that are struggling in their classes. Through this style of grading, we hope students will put less emphasis on grades and concentrate more on learning the material. We also hope students will embrace the flexibility to do what type of assignment they want, so they can demonstrate their knowledge in the best way they know how.